It's Datamine Day. There are a ton of new cards to talk about from the upcoming Spider-Man Brand New Day season, and then a season that looks like it's Wild West themed, where they gave Thanos a gun. Starting with Aunt May, a 2/3 with an end of turn ability. If you used a movable ability, give a movable card in your hand, -1 cost and 2 power, which brings us to the first of 2 keywords that comes up in this season. Movable is just what it means to be able to move. For example, a card like Nightcrawler would have movable 1, I believe, the ability to move once. A card like Vision would have an infinite amount of ability to move. You can move the card, it is movable. So Aunt May is a card that is meant to work with the sort of Spider-Man style of deck. A couple of cards that come to mind that make sense with this are Sam Wilson to just sort of accrue things. I suspect the shield will be granted movable in that sense. What I like about this card is that it encourages you to use those abilities early, but I fear that what that actually encourages you to do is to use the ones that are perpetual. So Sam Wilson just being able to constantly accrue value is already a problem for some metagames, right? Sam Wilson accruing value with Kraven the Hunter, with Batroc, and now also with this does seem like this will be a very powerful thing to be doing. What I suspect may balance this is that I don't know how many movable cards I'm going to want to be holding in my hand. A lot of the things I'm going to run in this deck are going to be cheap cards that I'm going to want to be playing onto the board so I can actually get the use out of their movable abilities. I don't know how consistently or how many cards with this movable ability. I only have like Nightcrawler that I'm really excited about. Sam Wilson himself won't get the buff. He doesn't have movable, so he can only give the buff, not get it. And then from there's maybe Spider-Man Brand New Day, and you really kind of run out of options fast. The new Jeff has movable, but are we playing old Jeff too? That seems like a lot. And this is already a deck that is very efficient. It's not going to be a deck that benefits as much from -1 cost so much as it's going to benefit from the additional power because it's already playing a bunch of fairly efficient stat sticks. We maybe get as far as Nocturne before I'm like really thinking that I don't have a lot of movable cards that I want to play. And that's a really interesting dynamic. Are we going to be able to hit the density of movable cards that make this worth doing? Because I would love the idea of just chucking this in my Sam Wilson Kraven deck, but what other deck building sacrifices am I going to have to make in order to get there? Next up is Mary Jane. At 3/3, end of turn, give each of your cards that moved this turn +1 power. She's sort of like a diffuse Hydra Stomper, and I think Hydra Stomper is probably the comp here. I'm not positive. There are going to be maybe other ways to hook into Mary Jane. The Datamined Venus card, that whenever your cards get +1 power, they get an additional +1 power, could be a thing that we're doing in this context, but largely I think this ends up as being slightly worse Hydra Stomper, which is a very reasonable place to be. Hydra Stomper himself is an unbelievably powerful card in the archetype, and having a second, even if it is worse, copy of Hydra Stomper is a valid thing, and I don't even know how much worse it's going to be in exchange for not working retrospectively or retroactively the way Hydra Stomper does because it's an ongoing. Mary Jane gains the ability to have her power distributed across multiple lanes. That can be an upside and a downside. Personally, I think Hydra Stomper fills the niche in the deck better in the sense that this deck already has a lot of ways to distribute points across the board. What it needs is a way to go super tall, and Hydra Stomper is better at doing that. But I do think that, like, if Hydra Stomper is a 10, this is like an 8, and that is still a pretty reasonable spot for a card to be in. This also hooks into more things than Hydra Stomper. Hydra Stomper is better at fulfilling his role, but this is the kind of thing that, like, maybe you play it with Venus, maybe you do it in other kinds of decks. And I think that's a really interesting space for them to play around with, where we have this, like, thing that is very similar to a card that is already good, but because it has different ways in which that effect is applied and activated, it's going to have different hooks and different inputs and different outputs. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a 1/2 with movable twice. So it can move 2 times per game, and after it moves to a location, +1 to a card there, even an unrevealed one. So you get to do cool stuff like move this to a location where you played a Brood, give the face down Brood additional power, which will give the other broods that come off of it additional power. This is a really good card, I think, that is just going to be one of the strongest one-drops in the game. The comparison is Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is better if you're playing it on turn 6, and sometimes if you're playing it on turn 5 without any like ways to hook in, Nightcrawler will end up being better as well. This is, though, a card that hooks in with not just the move archetype, but being able to move twice means that you can move it early for an Aunt May's proc or something like that, and then also late to redistribute it again. That's a really big deal. This is a card that you want on the board early. It's going to be a power spike to play this guy on 1, and it's going to be a 1/4's worth of value when you do. It only really starts to depreciate later in the game, but movable twice, we talked about with Aunt May, we're going to need like some density of this effect in the deck, and this is probably the best card with movable that isn't named Jeff from the season that is going to come out before this one, is my understanding. So I think this is going to be a really solid card. The overlap between movable and buff stuff is already there with Jeff, and I kind of wonder which direction this archetype is going to go. Are we still going to be Cravening? Are we going to be doing much more things in the buff-related space, and this is just going to be the best card for a movable deck and then also the best card for a buff deck to play on turn 1? This is definitely a card I'd replace Nightcrawler with in the current iterations of buff decks without even a question. And I think that that is a really solid space for this card to be. It looks like it might genuinely be the strongest one-drop in the game when it comes out. Tarantula, I'm not sure I see the vision on. 2/2, end of turn. If you have the highest power among cards in play, it gets +1 power, and so do 2 cards in your hand. This does not seem like it's going to be particularly reliable. I do like that I can do like Martyr, Wilson Fisk stuff with this. That is currently a good deck, and this is the kind of thing that like maybe I can play there. I'm not convinced that I would want to, but people certainly play worse cards in those decks. Like, this will be better than Adam Warlock in whatever deck that is doing that, but you shouldn't be playing Adam Warlock anyway, I suspect. And so we have a card that I think is like, this is like kind of fine, and it's definitely going to release in a space where, at least previously, this is like, I think what's coming out in 2 months, so we don't know what things are going to change, but Martyr, Wilson Fisk, Techno-Organic Virus stuff is the thing that this deck wants to go in, and it is currently quite a good deck, and so it does come out and have like some fairly immediate homes, but I do think that it is going to be much more like card 9 to 12 in that deck than it is going to be card 1 to 4. It's going to be a beneficiary of the power of other cards rather than a card that is going to be the engine of the deck itself. I don't think it's going to be bad. I just find it hard to construct a deck that is getting as much value out of this as you'd want. Like, I can get this to happen a lot, but I'm not really doing a lot with those buffs probably, because in order to get this to happen a lot, I'm playing a lot of cards that aren't scaling with buffs because I need them to be big immediately, and so them scaling with buffs prevents this from even happening in the first place. If my 3-drop is not Wilson Fisk, but is instead like a card like a Viv Vision, I just don't know if I can really do that, and I don't think this compares very well to Viv Vision if we're going to be talking about cards that reward you for being ahead with power in your hand. I kind of think I prefer playing 3/4 Viv, and, you know, it's good that she's there now, I suppose, but it's bad for Tarantula. Tombstone is just a really cool card, a really solid destroy card, a 2/3 with an on reveal that destroys your lowest power card in each other location. This is just kind of exactly the thing that a card like Muse, for example, is really excited to see. A secondary Killmonger for your own stuff is something that Destroy decks have really lacked for an extended period of time. Destroy decks are a lot of like, you know, the mid-rangey Destroy decks are a lot of like, I play hoods and things, and then I blow them up, and then I get extra value out of them, I misery them or whatever, but you usually want another way to get rid of that stuff because it's really bad if you can't get rid of it. And then the Deadpool decks just love anything that triggers destroys that's cheap, right? Like, you can just keep a location clear, Deadpool, Tombstone the Deadpool, because it's going to be the lowest power card at the location if it's the only card at the location. And so this feels like just an absolutely A1 card where it might not be the strongest card of the month, but it's just the card that is like clearly going to be good of the month to me, where it's just like, this is, maybe it's a role player in its own archetype, maybe it's just going to be there, but you're going to see this guy played. He's going to be in decks. He is going to do things for cards that previously are not having things done for them. Cards like Muse, just baseline Deadpool destroy, a lot of the decks playing the hood. Decks like Firehair can do some crazy stuff with this. The key thing for me is that there's no cap on him. So if you just have two things you want to destroy in two separate locations so you can do some ridiculous fire hair stuff or Nimrod stuff or whatever, all you've got to do is make sure they're the only cards there, which destroy decks are really good at doing. And I just sort of think that this guy is going to be around. This is a good ass card. I think it is just going to be a really legitimate Carnage type card where it's just like, if you're playing this archetype, he's gonna go in it. Boomerang's a super weird card, 2/2, with an ability that says when this returns to your hand, steal 4 power from cards in your enemy's hand, and an activate that returns him to your hand. So, weird card. I like it, but it doesn't scale exactly the way you'd want it to. You definitely want to play this in a deck with like Toxin and Beast that is returning it without the activate, right? That makes him a little bit faster. But he costs 2. And in order to get the output, you have to play him out, right? Like, okay, so he goes 2/2, steal 4. That's in theory, you know, a 2/10. In practice, you have to play him again, which makes him like a 4/10, right? Like, you got to play him to get his 6 power back on the board. If you just play him and activate him, he's in your hand. You have to play him again, right? And that dynamic is really interesting because obviously, like, if this effect were on a 1 cost, it would be almost totally negligible. You'd be beasting it, you'd be falconing it, it wouldn't be a problem. Even if this said like steal 2, it'd probably be like a pretty ridiculous card on a 1 cost. But on a 2 cost, that actually matters a ton. And I'm interested because I think Bounce is a pretty reasonable archetype. Like, maybe there's going to be something really cool I can do with this. Maybe I can like Mother Ascani it or whatever. I go like Mother Ascani on this, and then I play 2 of them and beast them, and they're 2 8s in my hand that did -8 to your hand or something. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing to be doing. It's not like incredibly busted, but like, there's stuff here, and it's hardly the most busted thing you can do with Ascani. This guy looks like a kind of bounce-only archetype card, but I think I'm more sure that Tombstone is going to hit in his specific archetype than I am that Boomerang is going to hit in his. Scorpion Brand New Day is a 6/8 with an ongoing that doubles the power reductions on all enemy cards. There's a couple of things that are weird here to me because power reductions is not typically how it's referred to. I think it's normally referred to as like afflictions, right? And doubling power reductions makes me wonder if like, if I Valkyrie something, what happens? I have actually no idea what happens in that situation, right? But I think largely this looks like an Ajax type card that probably costs 1 too many to be particularly powerful. And I think functionally releasing a 6-drop that gets countered by Luke Cage is just going to make the release week of this card pretty awkward. But I can imagine this card being a really cool top end for an Affliction deck. I just find it hard to believe that that deck will ever maneuver its way up to being one of the best decks in the game because of how easy it is to just instantly turn off. There are decks that are just going to be kind of strong unless people are countering them, and those decks always have very brief flashes in the sun, and it never happens when there's a lot of spotlight on them. These are the decks that shine when the night is darkest. You want to have nobody trying to counter you, and what I worry about for this card is it's going to come out. Instead of buying it, people are going to put Luke Cage in their mid-range decks, and they're just going to be like, I don't care. I don't care that you're doing this. You're not doubling anything. Nothing happens this game. And that is almost certainly what is going to happen. Spider Sense is a 5-cost skill that gives your cards at the location you play it +2 power, but it costs 1 less for each movable card you played. This is another reason, in addition to Aunt May, why we're looking at wanting extra things that say movable and what the density of cards that are playable with the text movable on them is. Spider-Man Brand New Day feels like a lock. Nightcrawler maybe feels like a lock. New Jeff feels like a lock. And then we get into like maybe Nocturne and Old Jeff, and we're like, man, I don't know how realistic it is for me to actually be doing this. I do think that it's like a cool thing to do, and if I can get this down to like 0 or 1, this is awesome. Adding 6 power to a location that you can then move cards out of, because presumably a lot of the cards at that location are going to be movable. That's dope. That's what this deck is really about. Getting to do that for free without taking up a board spot. If I can make that happen, it's awesome. I don't know how often I'm going to be able to make that happen. I think that if this card said 4 cost, I'd be like, I'm in. This is awesome. I'm going to be doing it. But the amount of the speed with which I run out of cards I want to put in my movable deck does give me a little bit of pause. The weirdest card they have made since at least Zombie Galacti. Sinister 6 is a 6/12. Great flavor. Hilarious. It's 6 and then 12, which is a multiple of 6. Good job. Game start. The first 6, again, great job. Characters you draw are evil. After you play them all, merge them into this and add this to the last one's location. Cool. Cool card. I like it. What's weird about it to me is I don't know how the hell I'm supposed to win a game with this. Like, okay, I build my deck. I make the giant Sinister 6. I get Shang-Chi. I build my deck. I make the giant Sinister 6. I get Shadow Kinged. And I can't really Taskmaster or Zola it. Because what if I draw Taskmaster or Zola and then have to play Taskmaster or Zola in order to make this card actually function? So what I'm looking at with this card is basically... what it is saying you get 12 free power for playing Marvel Snap if you're willing to concentrate it all in one lane. Maybe Arishem can do that? I don't know what can do that. Like, I want a deck that is able to create power while also not devoting it all to one lane, and I don't really know how to do that. The one thing that comes up is it says characters, so you can play skills and they won't get marked as evil. So if your combo involves skills, like if you're doing fastball special adamantium infusion on this, that is a thing that I think you can do. But I want to know how to win a second lane with this, because I don't know like how I'm going to be able to win a second lane and also maybe play these cards. Like I don't really know. Where is it merging from is the other thing. Like if I discard or destroy one of those cards, what happens is if it's in the graveyard via those methods, does it just not work? Am I just dead? Like if I get Moon Knighted, do I just the deck doesn't function because they discarded one of the cards that I need to play for the Sinister 6? What if one of the cards that I need to play for the Sinister 6 is like a Bucky Barnes, and I play the Bucky Barnes and then I blow up the Bucky Barnes? What happens then? Because I think that's different, right? Like would it merge from there? Bunch of questions about this card that I don't have any answers to, but the biggest one is how the hell am I winning a second lane? Next up is Jane Foster, Fractured Frontier. It looks like they're doing some kind of like cowboy thing here. I don't know what this is, but I'm not like a big, like I've read some comics. I don't know what this is. This is a 3/4 with a new keyword. This is a keyword called Quick Draw. We don't know what it means, but in Hearthstone, I believe it meant that you played the card the turn you drew it, and you got that additional effect, which would make sense with how Jane is written. Jane Foster, 3/4 on reveal, 4 random characters on the board are chosen. Yours get -1 power. Yours get +1 power. Theirs get -1 power. The quick draw is that happens a second time. So if you draw this on turn 3 and play it on turn 3, you're looking at a pretty insane value card. This is a card that plays as a 3/8 that if you quick draw it scales up to a 3/12, and that's not even to say that that's the only thing you can do. For example, with Venus on the board, this is a card that doubles the bonuses, right? Whenever your guys get a buff, they get an additional +1. So all your guys that got chosen got +2. If you quick draw it, they get +2 again. That kind of stuff seems pretty compelling to me, but largely I just think this card looks good. This is a card that gives me Wilson Fisk vibes, where it's like, I don't exactly know what this is going to do, but it just seems good. This is a card that is a good 3-drop to play, that is good and gets better when you do the thing it is asking you to do. In the service of Quick Draw, there is a Dr. Octopus Fractured Frontier 2/1. Put the leftmost card in your hand on top of your deck to add a random character to your hand. Give both +3 power. Now, what I like about this, generally, is the ability to manipulate the left of my hand has some pretty interesting Mother Ascani things that make me feel good about this. I can get a kind of bad card to Mother Ascani out of my hand, put it in on top of my deck with a buff, and then I will have a better Mother Ascani target and something that is buffed. What I don't like is adding a random character to my hand feels like it's just never a thing I'm going to actually care about. Like, maybe I can randomly get something good about this, sure, whatever. What I also don't like about this is that if you assume the random character kind of just doesn't matter and you're not playing it a lot, This is a 2-1 America Chavez with some hand manipulation attached. And that's not a very good thing and will depend a lot on how good the hand manipulation actually is. Now, I think the hand manipulation could be really good. Like we talk about quick draw, right? You got a quick draw card on the left of your hand. You play Doc Ock, you put it on the top of your deck, you quick draw it next turn. It's Jane Foster and the quick draw effect, and it's got +3. And that's pretty clearly what this card is trying to do. But I kind of think it might just be a buff card. Hellcow Fractured Frontier at 3/2. EOT, afflict all other characters here with -1 power. Destroy yours if there is 0 or less. I'll tell you what I see when I see this card. I see High Evo Cyclops. That's what this card is. You put this in a lane, it starts afflicting stuff at the end of the turn. Your downside is limited because if your stuff gets too small, it will just die and go away. And there's probably something you can do with that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, okay, I can play this and like destroy my own hood, whatever. I'm not really going to be building around that, though. I'm going to be building around the fact that this is like a High Evo Cyclops. And then I'm going to put it in my deck and it's going to be High Evo Cyclops. And like, that's what I'm going to be doing with it, right? And that kind of seems like the primary on this card, where the Destroy Clause feels a bit secondary. But like, I'm sure, not that there's not anything you can do with the Destroy Clause. It's just cool. I think there's stuff you can do there, but that's going to be like 10% of the card's strength. And 90% of the card's strength is that it's High Evo Cyclops, basically. Jay Jonah's Datamine to actually come out in this season, the Spider-Man season, not the Fractured Frontier season. This is a 1/3 ongoing. Your text emotes are ruder. I have nothing to say about this other than I really hope he doesn't scale with Onslaught and Mystique. And actually, maybe that's why they nerfed how Onslaught works. Finally, Thanos has a gun now, and yes, I need to go full screen on this infographic because he's the world's most complex card of all time, and you need to be able to understand all of the things that he does. First of all, 5/5. It's Thanos with a gun. His name is Thanos Fractured Frontier, I believe, but I'm going to be calling him Thanos with a gun. Game start, load 1 Infinity Round. The first card you draw each turn has quick draw, Thanos loads another. On reveal, Thanos fires. The shots that you can load, and we do not know if they are randomized or if there is a specific order you go through, are as follows. Reality Shot makes a copy of your other lowest card at the location you play Thanos. Power Shot gives Thanos 3 power. Time Shot reduces the cost of cards in your hand by 1. Space Shot gives Thanos +1 power and movable for 1 turn. Soul Shot destroys the weakest enemy card here, and Mind Shot draws 2 cards. So this is a card that is going to be able to do a bunch of different things. The biggest question for me when I look at a card that has this many on reveals is how do I copy those on reveals? But I'm not actually sure that those copies work, because I think what happens is Thanos expends the rounds. He uses all of them when you play him. So if you Grandmaster him, I don't know if they're actually going to be on him anymore. I think he might be non-Grandmasterable and non-absorbing manable in this way because I think he's expending the rounds. He spends them when he fires them. And that's a really interesting thing that really sticks out to me about the cards we've seen from the Fractured Frontier season. It seems like they've really learned from Star-Lord. And what I mean by that is, like, when I look at Fractured Frontier, one of the overarching themes I see when I look at the design is we want to make strong on reveals that are not strong copies of the on reveals. And quick draw is a really interesting way to accomplish that. These are on reveals that are really strong, right? Like the Jane Foster quick draw is unbelievable, but you can't quick draw Jane Foster and then Grandmaster her unless you're doing that on the same turn, which is obviously not reliable. And Thanos, for example, let's say he expends all the rounds. Well, you can't Absorbing Man him and Grandmaster him, which is what you'd be doing, right? Like that's what you'd want to do. As far as Thanos the card, what's interesting to me about this card is I feel like a lot of his power is like the clone and the blow up your opponent's stuff. That's the stuff that strikes me as pretty good. I'm playing this on turn 5. I'm cloning whatever I've left in a lane alone, like my 4-drop, right? I play this on turn 5. I clone my 4-drop. I gain movable. I blow something up. I go to a different lane. I win the game, right? Like that's what this card is trying to do. What's interesting to me about this is, though, you only load the shots if you play the quick drawed card, the first card you draw a turn. You need to play a really cheap deck to do that. This is like a surge card, you know, like you want to get like as many things running off the top as you can. Really interesting and should provide some really dynamic gameplay. One of the cards I'm probably most excited about for the entire, like in a long time in Marvel Snap, honestly. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.